France, Namibia. Well, the moment that I saw the French team that was being picked, I thought this was only going to go in one direction, but I didn't think it was going to go in that much of a direction as much as it did in that game. France end the game with almost 100 points, and Namibia scores a grand total of 0. I think that France pretty much played a full-strength side, so I thought, it's going to get messy, and it did. I did think the 15 for Namibia did start off as a bit of a bright spot for them. I thought, considering their opposition, Namibia's scrum was actually pretty decent and looked pretty strong and solid against France. I was pretty impressed with that. And I also thought the first penalty against Namibia was also kind of harsh. A ruck is formed, and then Antonio, while the ruck is formed, still has his hands on the ball, and penalties given to him to then put them in the corner, and then that sets up the first try. But that try is also given advantage for what? Early engagement. I thought Namibia's counter maul in the line out was timed perfectly. Didn't think it was a penalty for that either. I mean, listen, right? Namibia weren't going to win this game anyway, but I really didn't think it was fair of them that within the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game, they had 2 penalties that I think were really harsh against them that basically just set the tone for the rest of the game in terms of the dominance. So I think they were a bit hard done by that. And then Dupont has a great kick to Penard over in the corner, and he knows that when Penard is one-on-one versus somebody, it's usually going to end badly for the other person against Penard. Dupont really has figured out how to pass the ball forward and break the rules of rugby with his foot. It's really impressive. His cross-field kicks are absolutely sensational. No one does them better. I remember once Dupont came off later on in the game, which we'll get to later. Chalobert tried to do the same thing. Didn't quite work out the same way. But it is just sensational. Dupont is obviously just the best player in the world right now. I've also put what a try by Dante. I think this was the second try. Real coolness from the winger to judge it perfectly. And I think it was a guy who's not had a huge amount of experience with playing for France, and he's come in Namibia. I think he was one of the rare substitutes to get a start today. But his coolness to keep a foot in touch, jump up, pass it off, and give it to Dante for the try, I think that was sensational. The third try was even better. The chemistry and support play made me, I put a rude word here, but you can probably make a guess of what it is. It made me very excited, we'll put it that way. I've even said that you even have the French looseheads slinging passes like 20 meters across the pitch. France were just playing with such confidence, unbelievably so. They just are just so goddamn good, and they were just showing it today. I mean, I don't think you can really gauge whether this is France reaching the peak of their powers. Being honest, Namibia is not like the biggest competition, but I think it does say a lot where I think Japan are better than Namibia, but you compare England-Japan, England feel like they squeezed a win out, and then France-Namibia, you're very aware who's the tier 1 and who's the tier 2 country. So really powerful performance, and this will set up France nicely. I don't know if I would have changed a lot of French players at half-time, but when Dupont got hit in the head for a red card for Namibia, which was totally justified in my eyes, this is a perfect example of what should be a red card. Head-on-head collision, no mitigation, should be a red card. I've got no complaints about this, but when Dupont was coming off for his HIA, I think the whole world of rugby kind of, held their breath a little bit. He looked a little bit rattled. He looked like he had a bruise under his eye. Hopefully he's got no damage and no broken bones, and they just kept him off precautionary. But I did think at that point why France has still got all of their starters on. It didn't make much sense to me why that was the case. I think they would have made a lot of substitutions by that point, but they did at about the 55-minute mark. Okay, so adding in a little bit of context here, I recorded the video straight after the game. Obviously, Dupont is now injured. I think the earliest I've seen they're going to get him back is the semi-finals. So, what a shame. Hell of a player. And it does kind of beg the question, maybe you should have brought off the guys at half-time. The thing is, like, all the substitutes came on at 55 minutes, which is close enough to half-time that you feel like the starters get a full run out of the game. So I don't know if I blame them that much, but maybe it's just one of those things that just happens. And I know Dupont himself also likes to play 80 minutes every single game, so he probably wouldn't have been happy to come off any earlier. So big difference to the World Cup, and we'll talk about it more in the future. At the 50, kind of like the 45, 55 minute mark, you know, to be honest with you, I like competitive games of rugby, and this obviously wasn't. Put Namibia against, I don't know, Uruguay, and I'd probably be paying attention through the whole game, just because it's a competition. It's of the two teams of the same level. Put France against Namibia, and it's like 50-0 at half-time, then I start to get distracted. So what I decided to do was actually go through the entirety of the starting French 15, and because a lot of you get annoyed with my pronunciations of players, can't even say pronunciations, can't even pronounce pronunciations, but because you get some of you get annoyed with me with my pronunciations, I think what I'm going to go through is the starting 15 of the France team, and I'm going to just Englify all of their names just so it's easier for my arrogant English self. So starting with number 1, we've got Cyril Bailly. I called him Cedric Bingham. We got at number 2, Pito Makavaka. That is Peter Morstead. 3, we've got Unini Antonio. I called him Aldrich Anthony. 4, we've got Cameron Woki. I called him Cameron White. And then that was Cameron Wright. Sorry, Cameron Wright. Thibaud Flement. I called him Bob. Francois Cross, I called him Frankie Two Fingers. Charles Livion, I called him Charlie Oliver. Anthony Jalinek, I called him Anthony Jeselnik. Antoine Dupont is Tony Durst. Matthew Jalabert is Matthew Halibut. Louis Biel Bieri is Larry Big Balls. Jonathan Dante is now John Dant. Gail Foucault is named Tim, and Damien Pinard is Darian Price, and Thomas Ramos is simply Tom. Unfortunately, just as I finished making that list, Namibia almost scored a fantastic intercept try, which was obviously called back for that head collision. And that was pretty much where the game finished. I think the last interesting event that I wrote about was 53 minutes, and France decided to substitute all of their key players off the pitch. So, really strong game for France. A good, strong scrum from Namibia. And that's about it for this game. To be honest, kind of just looking forward to France facing some real sturdy competition. I feel like we were kind of robbed of that in the New Zealand game. Neither team kind of got going in that. So, man, I want to see this French team play against some real competition and see if they can do the same things, because they were making some pure magic today. But that's it for my review of France-Namibia. Illuminati